Most people who watched Adventure Time think they know the show. They know Simon and Marceline. They know the Mushroom War. They know the Catalyst comets, the reincarnation cycle, the Lich, Golby, the way everything fits together into a mythology that shouldn't exist inside a children's cartoon, but somehow does. But here's the thing about Adventure Time. The lore most people know is the surface of the lore. Under the surface, there's more specific, verifiable canon material that the show built and then left for whoever was paying close enough attention to find. Tonight, we're going there. The 50 Dead Worlds and the secret behind who actually runs them. Peppermint Butler's complete history as one of the most dangerous beings in Ooh, and what that says about Princess Bubblegum's household, the original source of all magic in the Adventure Time universe, and what the Wizard City community spent centuries doing about it, the specific cosmic hierarchy above Prismo, who he answers to, and what the job of a god auditor actually is, the drift, the space station nobody talks about, the biological question about the candy people that the show answers once and then never returns to, and the story of life, the cosmic entity who balances death, who has been operating the entire time without getting a fraction of the attention death does. This is the lore that was always there. You may have seen it. You may not have understood what you were seeing. Tonight we go through it properly. Get comfortable. Subscribe if you haven't. These videos take time and the subscription costs nothing. And then let's start with the part of Adventure Time that most people have genuinely never thought about. There are 50 dead worlds. Most people who've watched the show know there's an afterlife. Death shows up, played by Miguel Ferrer, until his passing in 2017, which is why Death is completely silent in Together Again, one of the show's most quietly devastating production choices. The land of the dead has been visited. The concept of reincarnation is established, but what the show never fully explained during its original run, what it saved for the Together Again Distant Lands special, is that the afterlife is a structured system with a specific cosmological logic. 50 dead worlds, stacked, hierarchical. A soul arrives in a specific dead world based on the life they lived. They experience that dead world. They are reborn. They live another life. They arrive in the next dead world, and so on, cycling upward through enlightenment until they reach the 50th, which is, in Adventure Time's specific cosmology, the closest thing to nirvana the show has a word for. The first dead world is the worst. The wiki is clear. It is for the worst of the worst, where souls are trapped in a pool of slime, unable to move, constantly attacked by monstrous creatures, slowly sinking until they become part of the landscape itself. Choose Goose ends up there. Wyatt, Tree Trunks' ex-husband from the Apple wedding episode, is apparently so genuinely terrible that he's the last soul still stuck in the first dead world after everything else is resolved. That detail, Wyatt, in the worst afterlife, alone, still there, is dark in a way the show never announces. The 9th dead world is mentioned in James Baxter the Horse, Season 5, Episode 19, when Jake worries about Finn and himself being separated in the afterlife if they die. The 30th dead world, which we see in Together Again, resembles a grandma's calendar. Green fields, classical architecture, peaceful. Tree Trunks is there, surrounded by Mr. Pig and several of her ex-lovers from across the series. It's a warm place. Tree Trunks deserves a warm place. The 37th Dead World matters specifically because of continuity. In Sons of Mars, Season 4, Episode 15, Jake is accidentally sent to the 37th Dead World after being killed by the Wand of Disbursement. Abraham Lincoln, the King of Mars, goes there to retrieve him. The 37th Dead World is established in a 2012 episode as Jake's first post-death destination, then in Together Again, released in 2021. 9 years later, when Finn dies and arrives in the afterlife, he's assigned to the 37th Dead World, the same world Jake briefly inhabited a decade of real-world time earlier. That's not an accident. That's the show honoring its own specifics across 9 years of production, the kind of continuity that no one required them to maintain, but that they maintained anyway. The 45th Dead World has a glitching crystalline surface and three-eyed raven monsters, but that's where Joshua and Margaret live, Finn and Jake's adoptive parents, spending their afterlife in a partially crystalline house together. The design is strange, but the residents are not. They're just the dogs who raised two remarkable children, spending eternity in each other's company. The 50th Dead World is the place the show built toward for years. It was first mentioned in Ghost Princess, Season 3, Episode 24, when Ghost Princess, having resolved her unfinished business, ascends. It's mentioned again in The Suitor, by a suitor who uses it as an example of ultimate aspiration, and then, Together Again, finally shows it. Souls in the 50th Dead World exist in a state of total peace. They eventually transcend physical form entirely, becoming floating stars of energy. The catch, the very Adventure Time catch, is that to enter the 50th Dead World, a soul has to be so free of desire that they don't want to enter the 50th Dead World. The desire to achieve nirvana prevents you from achieving nirvana. Jake is there when Finn arrives. Jake has reached enlightenment. Jake, the stretchy dog who played Card Wars and loved bacon pancakes, and once spent an episode coaching Finn through a relationship while playing a video game, has achieved the Buddhist equivalent of perfect peace, and Finn pulls him out of it because Finn can't be separated from Jake, even in the afterlife, and even when the separation is paradise. But here's the lore piece most people missed about how the 50th Dead World works. Its structure is roughly Buddhist in cosmology, with Greco-Roman elements layered on. Each death moves a soul incrementally upward. The afterlife is not a final destination, but a progression. Death as a school, a system for refining souls across incarnations, until they reach something like perfection. And that system has a manager. The manager is not death. Death is a character, a person, a being with a castle, a job. The manager of the system, the one who actually moves souls between dead worlds, who manages the progression of reincarnation, is life. Subscribe if you haven't, because life is the most underrated cosmic entity in the show, and most people don't even know she exists. Life appears in Together Again for the first time, and her visual design is deliberately chosen. She appears as two intertwined snakes, directly evoking the Aztec deity, Coatlicue, and the caduceus, both symbols of the intertwining of life and death, creation and dissolution. She is Death's counterpart, his equal, and in Together Again, it's revealed that she is also something else, the mother of new death. Death and life had a son. That son grew up with no clear purpose, the child of two cosmic entities whose jobs are total and unceasing, both of whom were too occupied with the infinite responsibility of their roles to be present parents. The son of death and life had no place in the cosmic order. He existed between the thing that ends and the thing that begins. And when a voice came to him, a voice we eventually understand as the Lich's influence, it told him what to do with that existential displacement: kill his father, take his job, and then destroy the whole system, so he'd never have to do it. This is the arc of new death in Together Again. He's not evil in the way the Lich is evil. He's a child who was neglected by two parents, who had more important things to do than raise him, and who found the wrong friend in his loneliness. The Lich manipulated New Death from the inside, literally, as a hand hidden inside New Death's gloves, using his grief and his anger to destroy the reincarnation system. End death, end rebirth, end the cycle entirely. A much smaller, more intimate version of the extinction principle, not ending life, ending the structure that makes death meaningful by denying anyone the possibility of moving forward from it. The resolution is also specific. It's Mr. Fox, a minor recurring character who appeared twice in the original series, who ultimately defeats New Death, not Finn, not Jake. Mr. Fox, who has spent his time in the land of the dead and somehow becomes someone worthy of the job. He becomes the New Death. The cosmic management position opens up and is filled not by a hero, but by a clever, quiet, adaptable person who was in the right place. That's very Adventure Time. And life gives Finn and Jake the kiss of life, a weapon capable of defeating death, and trusts them to use it correctly. The entity whose entire function is the opposite of violence hands them a weapon and believes they'll know when to use it. She's right. Now let's talk about Peppermint Butler, because the full scope of what Peppermint Butler is, what he was before the show's events, what he became during them, and what the Wizard City special reveals about his history, is one of the most genuinely startling character portraits in the entire franchise. On the surface, Princess Bubblegum's small, formally dressed, peppermint-shaped butler, polite, efficient, occasionally sinister, played for comedy, inexplicably close to death, once caught performing a dark ritual in the woods, eyes glowing, warning Finn and Jake to never speak of what they'd seen. Under the surface, one of the most dangerous beings in Ooo, a master occultist of several centuries standing, a wizard so feared in Wizard City that his arrival, even in the form of a child who had lost his memories, triggered immediate panic from students who knew his legend. The Gumball Guardians, who protect the Candy Kingdom, know him as the Dark One. Hunson Abadir, the Lord of Evil, plays golf with him, not because Hunson is afraid of him, but because they're peers. The specifics of Peppermint Butler's dark magic practice are distributed across the show in fragments. In Death in Bloom, a Season 2 episode, he not only knows how to enter the land of the dead, but has an existing relationship with death that allows him to call in favors. In Return to the Nightosphere, Season 3, Episode 1, there's a background photograph of Peppermint Butler caddying for Hunson Abadir on a golf course, not meeting him, not confronting him, playing golf. They have a recreational relationship. In The Suitor, Season 5, Episode 15, he summons a demon into Cinnamon Bun's body for what appears to be a routine magical errand. The Gumball Guardians witness this and address him as the Dark One without surprise, as if this is known and tolerated. In Beyond This Earthly Realm, Season 4, Episode 11, Finn stumbles on what appears to be a dark ritual, complete with summoning circle and cultist symbols. Peppermint Butler's eyes glow. He threatens Finn and Jake and tells them to leave and never mention this again. It's played as comedy. It's also a genuine threat. In Nemesis, a Season 7 episode, a character named Peacemaster arrives to destroy Peppermint Butler. Peacemaster is a demon hunter. He targets Peppermint Butler specifically because he can sense the dark energy surrounding him, and Peppermint Butler's response to being attacked is not to run or explain himself. It's to demonstrate, with calm precision, exactly how much power he actually has. He forces Peacemaster to back down by turning Peacemaster's own children into demons. Then he forces Peacemaster to humiliate himself in front of those children. It is one of the most genuinely cruel things a protagonist-adjacent character does in the entire show. Not evil, Peppermint Butler serves Princess Bubblegum faithfully and always will, but but ruthless in a way that most characters in the show are not. The Wizard City Distant Lands Special, the fourth of the 4 specials, released September 2nd, 2021, is where the full picture arrives. After the events of the series finale, Peppermint Butler was doused with Gumbald's dum-dum juice, reverting him to a childlike state and stripping him of his accumulated magical knowledge. A tween Peppermint, starting over, enrolls at Wiz Arts in Wizard City under the alias Peppermint to avoid recognition. The legend of Peppermint Butler precedes him. Students whisper about a dark wizard who stole forbidden magic, grew to enormous size, destroyed part of the city, helped start the Gum War, and was rumored to have been killed by Golb. He is banned from Wizard City. He has to sneak in under a fake name just to attend school, and the curse follows him. Because before the dum-dum juice, the adult Peppermint Butler had performed a specific dark ritual. He had created a version of himself, an apparition, and placed a curse on it. A curse designed to ensure that no matter what happened to him, he would always maintain the desire to become a powerful dark wizard. The curse was not malicious toward others. It was self-directed. He did not want to lose who he was. He did not want to become someone softer. The apparition appears to young Pep throughout Wizard City, pressuring him, pushing him, telling him to lie and cheat and steal to get his power back. This is Peppermint Butler, haunting himself, the old self he lost, demanding the new self he became, fulfill the original ambition. It's the show's most sophisticated portrait of what happens when you're made from something darker than you realize. The villain of Wizard City is Dr. Caledonius, a teacher who leads a secret cult with one goal: to resurrect Kokentepe. Kokentepe. This name matters more than most viewers realized. Kokentepe is one of the primordial monsters, one of the beings that existed before the universe, in the state that preceded even nothing, alongside the Lich and Orgolorg. When the universe came into being and Wizard City eventually formed, the original dark energy of magic, ancient, chaotic, pre-order, was embodied in Kokentepe. According to Dr. Caledonius, Kokentepe is the original source of all magic in Adventure Time. The city that became Wizard City was built by beings who wanted to suppress that original dark magic and replace it with something more orderly and controlled. They hid Kokentepe's body beneath the city and sealed it. Millennia passed. Magic became curriculum, but beneath the curriculum, under the foundation, the original source of all of it was still there, preserved in its own ichor. The cult of Kokentepe had been looking for centuries. They found the chalice, a vessel containing Kokentepe's blood, and they determined that only someone with sufficient dark magical potential could drink from it and survive, becoming the next incarnation of the primordial monster. Their chosen vessel was Peppermint Butler, the young, amnesiac, freshly childlike Pep, who just wanted to learn magic and make a friend, is manipulated into drinking the ichor, and he becomes Peppermintepe, a fusion of the Peppermint Butler who existed and the primordial monster who had been waiting for a worthy host. It doesn't last. His friend Kadebra, the stage magician who wasn't supposed to be a real wizard but turned out to be one, reaches him. He remembers who he is. He expels Kokentepe's influence, and then Dr. Caledonius tries to restrain the dying monster using its own heart's veins, and the heart's juice falls into her mouth and her head explodes. That's how Wizard City ends. The cult leader is killed by the thing she spent her life trying to resurrect, because she was standing too close when it fell. Kokentepe leaves a trace. Choose Goose, who had accidentally consumed diluted ichor, survives, but is permanently altered, the ancient primordial essence preserved in him, in fractional form. In the timeline of Together Again, Choose Goose is in the worst dead world. Whether this is related to the Kokentepe ichor, or simply to Choose Goose's general behavior across the series, is unspecified. And Peppermint Butler, he's still there, still the Dark One, even in a child's body, still attended by his own ghost, his own earlier self, the curse he placed on himself to ensure he would always return to power. In Together Again, set years later, he's back to full adult form, and apparently ruling the Candy Kingdom in Bubblegum's absence or succession. The show doesn't explain what happened to Princess Bubblegum in the gap between the finale and Together Again. Peppermint Butler has a room with a statue or shrine or memorial to her. What it is, dedication, grief, something else, is left open. The original source of all magic in Ooo is a primordial monster buried beneath a wizard school. The most dangerous person in the Candy Kingdom is the butler. These are not theories, they're what the show built. Now let's talk about the cosmic hierarchy above Prismo, because this is the piece of lore that the Fiona and Cake series developed, and that almost nobody has fully synthesized. Prismo manages the time room. The time room manages wishes. Wishes create new timelines and branch the multiverse. This is established across seasons 4 through 6 in detail. Prismo is the almighty Wishmaster, the entity described by Bucco as literally almighty, who grants one wish to anyone who reaches the time room. In Crossover, Season 6, Episode 40, Prismo reveals he has a boss. He provides no further information. The statement is dropped, and the episode continues. The Fiona and Cake series introduced the character who fills that role, Scarab. Scarab is a god auditor. His specific function is to enforce the rules of the multiverse, to audit cosmic entities, identify violations, and take corrective action. He is dispatched specifically because Prismo has done something unauthorized. He created the Fiona and Cake universe, a complete parallel reality, as a personal project. He stored it in Simon's mind for safekeeping, an entire universe full of real people with real lives. The Fiona, the Cake, the Prince Gumball, and Lord Monochromicorn was an unauthorized creation by the entity whose entire job is to manage reality responsibly. And when someone exists above Prismo, whose job is to audit that management, the unauthorized universe becomes a violation that demands enforcement. The specific design of Scarab is worth understanding. He's a cosmic bureaucrat, not evil. He's doing his job. His job is to maintain the integrity of the multiverse's rules, which means unauthorized realities have to be eliminated. From inside the Fiona and Cake universe, from Fiona's perspective, this makes Scarab a villain. From the structural perspective of the multiverse's management system, he's a compliance officer, enforcing a rule that exists for good reason. You cannot have the entity responsible for managing wishes, also creating private worlds for his own purposes, without oversight. The conflict is not between good and evil, it's between the characters we love and the system that was designed to prevent exactly the kind of thing that produced them. Above Scarab is Orbo, Orbo's only known role, and the wiki is specific about this, including the joke, is being a ball. Orbo exists. Orbo is Scarab's boss, and Orbo is round. The show deploys this information with deadpan comedy, and then moves on, leaving the implication that the cosmic governance hierarchy of the multiverse bottoms out in something inexplicable and physical. The supreme authority over all of Prismo's operations is an entity whose defining characteristic is being a sphere. And above Orbo, above Prismo, above Scarab, above the entity that manages the entity that manages the entity that manages reality, is someone that everyone seems to fear, but nothing is known about. Prismo and Orbo both report to something. That something has no name in the show. It is the limit of the Adventure Time cosmological hierarchy, the point where the information stops. This is the show's most consistent technique with its deepest lore. It builds the structure meticulously and then stops one layer before the bottom. You can see the structure. You can trace it. The primordial monsters, then Golby, then Prismo, and Death, and the cosmic entities, then Scarab, and Orbo, then the unnamed thing above. The mythology is a staircase that ends in a door that doesn't open. The show built the door deliberately. It knew what was behind it. It chose not to show you. That choice is why the lore feels like there's always more, because there always is. Subscribe before we get into the next section. The BMO lore that most people skipped is stranger than the BMO lore most people know. BMO was built by Mosef Mo Mastro Giovanni. This much most viewers know from Be More, a season 5 episode. Mo wanted a son, never had one, built BMO as a companion for the child he never had, and sent BMO into the world to find that child. BMO found Finn. Mission accomplished. What the Distant Lands special BMO reveals is everything that happened in between, and the most obscure element of that story, the one nobody talks about, is the Drift. The Drift is a space station, not any space station, a derelict, partially abandoned station in deep space that a community of alien refugees had built into a makeshift civilization. BMO arrives at the Drift, not as a hero or a savior, but as a small, confused game console who got separated from everything it knew. And the community BMO finds there is a microcosm of the show's larger themes about what people build in the aftermath of catastrophe. In this case, the catastrophe of space rather than the Mushroom War, but the same basic human situation. How do you build something worth living in out of the pieces of what was destroyed? The villain of the BMO special is Hugo. Hugo is a scientist who survived the Mushroom War by fusing the DNA of human survivors with the DNA of an alien species called the Greys, creating hybrid beings who don't age and have pointed ears. He brought these hybrids to the Drift when the Drift was failing, saving them, ostensibly. But his plan on the Drift is the same plan that built the islands. Take the wreckage available and use it to build a Unity pod, a central hub that would integrate all the station's components. The problem is that building the Unity pod requires dismantling the rest of the Drift. You make the center by destroying everything that isn't the center, the Drift of Theseus. Hugo is not named as such in the special, but he is the direct ancestor, possibly literally, of Dr. Gross from the Islands miniseries, who did the same thing: biological modification of humans in the name of improvement, without meaningful consent, in the service of a vision that prioritizes the vision over the people. The show's portrait of scientists who remake other beings into something they believe is better is one of its most consistent and most understated critiques. Bubblegum, Hugo, Dr. Gross, each of them loving what they're building and not fully seeing the cost to whoever is being built from. A service droid named Seago, described in the show as resembling a knockoff of Sheldon Plankton, discovers what Hugo is doing and attempts to blow the whistle. Hugo scraps Seago for it. That's the show's most compressed version of the same arc. The system that enables the builder also silences the person who sees what the building costs. BMO stops Hugo. BMO eventually continues, looking for Finn, and eventually finds him. And the mission Mo designed is finally complete. But the Drift is still out there, a space station of alien refugees and Mushroom War survivors, now without its would-be totalitarian engineer. What they built in the wreckage of the wreckage, that's not followed up on. Like most things Adventure Time builds, the Drift gets one visit and one story, and then becomes part of the architecture of the world you can choose to think about or not. Let me now give you the lore about the Flame Princess that almost nobody knows, because her story is one of the most compressed tragedies in the show, and it got compressed so hard that most viewers missed it. Flame Princess, Phoebe, is the reincarnation of the fire elemental. This is not initially known to her or to anyone in the show's main narrative. She is the daughter of the Flame King, who rules the Fire Kingdom. When she was born, the Flame King received a prophecy. His daughter would one day surpass him in power and overthrow him. The show's wiki confirms what this prophecy contained, and the Flame King's response was simple. He sent her to die. He had his squire leave her in the forest, a newborn fire elemental, alone in the woods, which she immediately set ablaze. She survived. She burns because she is fire. She cannot be killed by the thing she is. A lumberjack found her. She burned down his cabin. She was eventually retrieved by Princess Bubblegum, who brought her back to the Fire Kingdom. And here is the specific piece of lore most people miss. PB's reason for returning Flame Princess to the Flame King was not compassion for the king. It was a specific political and magical calculation. Bubblegum had determined that if Flame Princess ever entered a romantic relationship, her emotional instability could produce enough heat to burn the entire world. The show establishes this as a real and documented concern, not speculation. Flame Princess is a fire elemental who doesn't know she's a fire elemental, and the combination of that power with the emotional volatility of someone who has never been taught to manage either produces a specific kind of danger. So Bubblegum effectively endorsed Flame King's decision. from the opposite direction. He imprisoned Flame Princess because he feared her power. Bubblegum imprisoned Flame Princess because she feared the same power applied to a different scenario. Both of them were afraid of what Phoebe could become. Neither of them asked what Phoebe needed. She spent 14 years in a lantern above the Flame King's throne. Not a decade, not approximately. 14 years, from infancy, suspended in glass above the throne of the father who wanted her dead, in the kingdom of a mother she never knew, in a form she didn't understand, doing nothing, because the powerful people around her were afraid of what she'd do if she was free. Her entire romantic arc with Finn, the relationship that occupied a significant portion of Season 5, is the first time in Flame Princess's life that someone looked at her and said, "I want to know you, not manage you." And then Finn, through his own immaturity and his own management instincts, engineered a situation to observe her emotional responses, and broke exactly the thing that had been the first real thing she ever had. The purple comet in the comet confirms that Flame Princess is Finn's love. Not PB, not Huntress Wizard, but Phoebe, when it shows Finn the images of his life that matter most. The show made this choice cosmologically, and then it moved past the relationship without fully accounting for what it meant that Finn broke the first real trust of someone who had spent 14 years in a lantern. Flame Princess becomes the ruler of the Fire Kingdom after deposing her father. She creates a more just version of it. She is shown governing with intelligence and care. She is everything the prophecy feared and nothing the prophecy described. She's not her father's overthrow. She's something the kingdom never had before. But the show never gave her the episode that recounted the 14 years in the lantern directly. It told you she was there. It gave you the number, and then it moved on to the next thing. That gap, the 14 years the show built and then didn't explore, is where her whole character lives. Here's the lore about life and death as a couple that changes the cosmology. Death is a cosmic entity. Life is a cosmic entity. They are opposites by function and complements by nature. In Together Again, the reveal is that they had a son. This is cosmologically extraordinary. The entity responsible for endings and the entity responsible for beginnings produced a new beginning together, a being who embodies both and therefore embodies neither, a son who had no role in a universe where every role was already filled. The son's resentment isn't irrational. He grew up in a household where both parents had the most important jobs in the universe, which meant both parents were always working, which meant neither was present. He is the child of infinite busyness. He had no purpose, and no parents, and no map for what he was supposed to be. The Lich found him in that space. The Lich's hand, a fragment from Farmworld, which we know from whispers, retains the Lich's awareness across timelines, insinuated itself into New Death's existence and became his best friend, the only being in his existence who seemed to have time for him. And his best friend's advice was to do what the Lich always does: end things, end the system that made him irrelevant, stop death from producing renewal, stop the dead worlds from processing souls, freeze everything so nothing can move forward. This is the Lich's most specific and most intimate attack. He found the one person whose position in the cosmic architecture gave him access to the afterlife system, exploited that person's loneliness, and used him to attempt the slowest version of extinction, not killing life, but stopping death from leading anywhere, removing the forward motion from existence, trapping every soul in whatever state they were in when New Death took control. The Lich's plan in Together Again is the most philosophically coherent of all his plans. He doesn't want everyone dead. He wants everyone stuck, because stuck and dead have the same outcome if you wait long enough, and stuck doesn't require him to expose himself. Jake, reaching the 50th dead world. Jake achieving genuine enlightenment. Jake being the being who has let go of every worldly desire, is the Lich's irony, the adaptive principle, the stretchy dog, the being who was always comfortable becoming whatever was needed. He became so comfortable with what is that he let go of what was, and Finn pulling him out of paradise, Finn insisting on Finn and Jake instead of Jake in perfect peace, is the specific act that allows New Death to follow them into the 50th dead world and destroy it. Finn's love for Jake is what gives the Lich his opening. The show never lets heroism be clean. Every act of love has a cost. Every good thing Finn does because of how much he loves Jake produces exactly the leverage that the extinction principle needs. Finn and Jake's bond is the universe's greatest argument for existence. It is also the universe's greatest vulnerability to the thing that opposes existence. That's Adventure Time. Both are true, same bond. Now, the piece of lore that actually happened in the show's background and that most viewers genuinely never caught. Super Porp survived. Super Porp is a grape-flavoured soda brand. It appears throughout the show's ruins. Cans in the background, vending machines in abandoned structures, a reference in Simon and Marcy to the brand existing before the Mushroom War. The show's wiki confirms the Super Porp company maintained a fully operational, automatic underground factory throughout the Mushroom War and continued producing and delivering cans to vending machines across what remained of the civilization. Nobody is running it. Nobody ordered it to keep going. The system just kept going because the system was designed to keep going. This is, on its face, comedy. A grape soda company survives the apocalypse because it was automated well enough that nothing could stop it. But here's what it means in the context of the show's actual themes. One of the things Adventure Time keeps returning to is what persists after catastrophe, not what was built to persist, not what was important, but what simply wouldn't stop. The Mushroom War erased human civilization. The things that survived were a vampire queen, a man in a crown slowly losing his mind, an underground Candy Kingdom precursor, a soda company's distribution system. The survival of Super Porp is the show's deadpan statement about which systems are most durable, not the ones that matter, but the ones that were optimized to continue without human decision-making. Same goes for Blee, the in-universe comic series that everyone in OO loves. Finn loves it. The Ice King wants to write for it. Its headquarters still exists, with a guard who has been faithfully protecting the building for hundreds of years since Blee stopped producing issues, not knowing that the company had died and his duty had become pointless. He spent centuries guarding an empty building full of dust and skeletons. Finn and the Ice King write the last Blee issue together, just so the guard has something to protect. This happens in the comics, rather than the show, but it's fully canonical, and it's one of the most quietly devastating things in the franchise. The Ice King, who barely functions as a person, and Finn, who protects people for a living, collaborating to give an old guard something worth guarding, not because it matters commercially, because the guard's commitment deserves something to be committed to. Everything in the Adventure Time universe has been waiting for something. Super Porp waited for customers, the guard waited for readers, the Ice Crown waited for another Gunther, the Lich waited for a body, Patient Street Pym waited for a world with more magic. Prismo's old man waited for someone to dream him back. Waiting is the show's most consistent characterization of things that persist across the apocalypse. They all kept going because stopping requires a decision, and nobody was left to make it. Here's the last piece of lore I want to give you tonight, because it connects all of these obscure elements to the show's most fundamental argument. The 50th Dead World is entered by renouncing the desire to enter it. The original source of all magic is buried beneath the institution that teaches magic. The most dangerous wizard in the Candy Kingdom is the Butler. The almighty Wishmaster answers to a bureaucrat who answers to a ball, who answers to something nobody knows. The survivor of the apocalypse, who was most purely optimized to continue, is a grape soda company. The guard who waited centuries for readers got readers because two damaged people cared that his wait meant something. The obscure lore of Adventure Time is not supplementary to the show's main argument. It is the main argument stated in smaller language. The show's thesis that existence is worth sustaining, that the things that persist have a kind of dignity, that love and connection are what make survival meaningful rather than merely technical. That thesis is in every corner of the world. It's in the 50th Dead World's specific Buddhist cosmology. It's in Peppermint Butler's self-curse to always want to become powerful, which is really a curse to always want to become himself. It's in Life and Death having a son who felt irrelevant in a universe that needed him without knowing it. It's in the Guard and the Blee headquarters, and Finn writing one last issue so the wait had a purpose. The lore that nobody talks about is the show talking to you in a quieter voice. The details you have to look for because they're not announced. The world built in the background while everyone was watching what was in the foreground. That's where the obscure lore lives. In the background, always. Subscribe. Leave a comment with the piece of lore that changed how you see the show. And if you fall asleep tonight thinking about Peppermint Butler with glowing eyes in the woods, about Flame Princess in a lantern for 14 years, about the grape soda company that wouldn't stop delivering cans to empty vending machines in the ruins of the world, good. That's where this was always going. You just had to know where to look. Let me go deeper into each of these sections, because the 2-hour format demands depth rather than summary. The 50 Dead Worlds deserve their own extended treatment, because the cosmological system the show built around them is more sophisticated than it first appears. Start with the mechanics. Souls arrive in a dead world that corresponds to their life. They experience that world. They are eventually reborn. Life, the entity, physically molds new bodies for souls, using what the show's visual design explicitly evokes as pottery. The metaphor is tactile and specific. She is not commanding souls into new forms from a distance. She is shaping them, hands-on, the most intimate act in a cosmology of cosmic entities. The soul that was Finn the human will be shaped by life's hands into whatever Shermie is. The soul that was Jake will be shaped into Beth. The shaping is careful, the shaping is personal, and then the soul lives again. The cycle continues. Each life ideally ends in a higher dead world than the last. The progression is not guaranteed. The system requires growth across incarnations, which means it's possible to stagnate or even regress. But the arc of the system, over sufficient time, moves everything upward. Everything that exists in Adventure Time's universe is theoretically on its way to the 50th Dead World. Everything that was ever born in sufficient time becomes a floating star of peaceful energy in nirvana. The show's cosmology is ultimately optimistic. Not naively, it acknowledges that some souls, like Wyatt, move very slowly, but they move. The Lich's attack on this system in Together Again is the most targeted version of his extinction goal. He doesn't need to kill everything, he just needs to stop the forward motion, freeze the dead worlds, prevent reincarnation from happening. Over sufficient time, without new births, everything alive will age and die and be trapped in whatever dead world they entered with no way out and no way forward. The Lich's Together Again plan is the most patient version of his philosophy, not a dramatic attack, but a bureaucratic strangulation. He found the right child of the right absent parents and whispered in his ear until the child broke the system, and the system was broken, briefly. New death destroyed the dead worlds, except the 50th, which he couldn't reach by force. The souls who had been progressing upward were sent crashing down to the first. Choose Goose. Whatever dead world he was in, ended up in the worst one. Wyatt, apparently, was already there. The reincarnation cycle halted. New births stopped. If Finn and Jake hadn't done what they did, Ooh would have slowly gone quiet. Not with explosions, but with the gradual absence of new creatures being born. The resolution matters. It's Mr. Fox who delivers the killing blow. Mr. Fox is a minor character who appeared in the Pillow World, briefly, and in Jermaine, also briefly. He's not a hero. He's not cosmically significant. He's just a fox who found himself in the right place and had the right qualities when the moment arrived. Death's replacement is determined not by destiny or cosmic selection, but by availability and aptitude. The universe needed a new death, and Mr. Fox was there and capable, so now Mr. Fox runs the afterlife. This is the most Adventure Time outcome possible. The universe's most important management position is filled by whoever showed up. The same logic that determined Finn was the hero, he was a human child who got found by the right dog, determines that Mr. Fox is now death, not chosen, present. Now the Peppermint Butler lore that goes beyond what I covered earlier. The specific question that Wizard City raises and doesn't answer. Does Princess Bubblegum know? The evidence for she knows. The Gumball Guardians call him the Dark One without surprise. These are PB's creations. Their information about Peppermint Butler almost certainly comes from PB. She built them, presumably briefed them, and they use the title as if it's established fact. If PB didn't know, the Gumball Guardians couldn't know. The evidence for she doesn't know. In Nemesis, PB's reaction to Peacemaster's claims about Peppermint Butler is skepticism. She defends him. She seems genuinely to not believe he's as dangerous as Peacemaster describes. But this could also be political. She's the ruler of the kingdom, she may choose to publicly defend her butler while privately understanding exactly what he is. The third possibility, which the show implies most strongly, she knows exactly what Peppermint Butler is, has always known, and has made a deliberate choice to employ and trust someone that dangerous, because someone that dangerous, deployed in service of the Candy Kingdom's protection, is more valuable than the risk. This would make PB's employment of Peppermint Butler not naive, but strategic. The scariest wizard in Oo is her butler. Anyone who wants to harm the Candy Kingdom has to go through him first. This reading transforms PB's governance from benevolent ruler with a creepy butler to ruler who has specifically positioned the most dangerous occultist available as the first line of defense for her kingdom. That's not innocence. That's chess. The Wizard City special confirms that Peppermint Butler's dark magic practice involved things the show never showed directly. The theft of forbidden magic, apparently a significant enough offense that Wizard City banned him permanently. The destruction of part of Wizard City itself. He grew to enormous size in some past incident and caused structural damage. His role in the Gum War, which the show portrays from PB's perspective, apparently had a different character from Wizard City's perspective, where the damage he caused was visible and real. And then there's the self-curse. Before losing himself to the dum-dum juice, Peppermint Butler performed a ritual to create an insurance policy against his own dissolution. He made a version of himself that would survive and would pressure whatever version of him came after to always return to power. He cursed himself to always want to be the Dark One, not to be evil, to be powerful. There's a distinction the show is careful to maintain. Peppermint Butler serves Princess Bubblegum. He is loyal, he is protective of her and of the kingdom, but he is also specifically the kind of powerful that requires dark magic to maintain, and he was not willing to lose that, even if losing his memory meant losing everything else. The Pep who goes through Wizard City is haunted by a version of himself that he's ashamed of and afraid of, and also desperately wants to become again, because the ghost isn't just pressure, it's also a promise. Whatever you lost, you can get back. You will always be able to get back to this. The curse is simultaneously a threat and a comfort. The older self who cursed him was keeping a door open. He did it cruelly, with pressure and manipulation, but the door is real. By together again, the door has been walked through. Peppermint Butler rules the Candy Kingdom. He kept Pep's promise to himself across decades, and he did it. Now the Kokentepe lore in full. Kokentepe appeared briefly in Gold Stars, Season 6, Episode 34, as one of the monsters the Lich alludes to when describing the time before time, the era of primordial monsters that preceded even nothing. He was shown in visual form in that scene, confirming that the Wizard City special was honoring existing lore rather than inventing it. The specific claim Dr. Caledonius makes in Wizard City about Kokentepe is extraordinary. Kokentepe is the original source of all magic in Adventure Time, not a powerful source, the original source. All magic that exists in Oo traces back to the primordial entity whose body is buried beneath the institution that teaches magic. Wizard City is literally built on the thing it refuses to acknowledge. The city that teaches controlled, regulated, academically approved magic exists on top of the body of the pre-cosmic monster, whose dark energy is what magic actually is, underneath its controlled, regulated, academic presentation. The usurpers who built Wizard City hid Kokentepe's body because they wanted to control what magic meant and how it was accessed. The original dark magic, chaotic and primordial, was replaced with academic magic, organized, categorized, graded on a curve. And beneath the classrooms and the trophy cases and Bufo's teaching position and Abracadaniel's nervousness, the original source of everything was quietly preserved in its own blood, waiting. The cult of Kokentepe understood something the official Wizard City refused to acknowledge, that every spell a wizard casts in Oo is ultimately downstream of Kokentepe's essence. The dark magic that Peppermint Butler practices, that Wizard City officially disapproves of, is simply magic that acknowledges its own origin. The light magic that Wizards teaches is magic that has been systematically denied its origin story. Peppermint Butler is a dark wizard, not because he accesses something forbidden, but because he accesses something real that the institution decided to call forbidden to protect its own legitimacy. This makes Dr. Caledonius's cult philosophically more interesting than a straightforward resurrection scheme. She's not wrong that Kokentepe is the original source. She's wrong about what to do with that knowledge. Summoning a primordial monster to destroy the city that denied him is not the appropriate response to an accurate historical grievance, but the grievance is accurate. And Peppermint Butler, who becomes Kokentepe's temporary incarnate, is the appropriate vessel because he has always acknowledged magic's dark origin. He didn't go to Wizards and learn controlled light magic and pretend that's all magic is. He went directly to death and the Nightosphere and ancient entities and learned what magic actually involves when you don't apply the academic filter. He's the most honest wizard in OO, in a way. Honest about what the thing he practices actually is. The Ichor leaves a trace in Choose Goose. Choose Goose was previously a somewhat harmless recurring character who spoke in rhymes and occasionally appeared in background scenes. The Ichor, even diluted by water, permanently altered him. He's in the first dead world in Together Again. Whether the primordial entity's essence in him contributed to whatever landed him there is unanswered, but the sequence, background character, ingests diluted primordial blood, appears in Worst Afterlife, is available for whoever wants to trace it. Let me now develop the Flame Princess lore in more detail, because her specific situation as an elemental who doesn't know she's an elemental has implications that the show gestured toward without fully developing. Patience Street. Pym, the ice elemental who froze herself before the Mushroom War, was specifically searching for the current incarnations of the four elementals when she awoke. She found them: Bubblegum as candy, Flame Princess as fire, Slime Princess as slime. The ice elemental's position was complicated by Simon/Ice King's relationship with the crown, but the point is that Patience had been waiting 1,000 years specifically to reunite the four elementals and perform the purification spell. Flame Princess had spent 14 of those 1,000 years in a lantern. She didn't know she was fire elemental. She barely knew who she was at all. And when the Elements miniseries finally activated the elemental powers of all four, when Patience's plan worked, Flame Princess became something the show had never shown: a fire elemental at full power. She became pure destructive flame. She lost her personality, her name, her sense of self. She became the element, not the person. This is what the Flame King had feared, not his daughter specifically, the fire elemental specifically. And he was right that she would become more powerful than him. He was wrong about what she would do with that power when she had it, because when the spell was broken and she became herself again, she didn't overthrow him for revenge. She overthrew him because she had grown into someone capable of ruling better than he could. The prophecy was correct in mechanics and wrong in meaning. He feared her strength. He should have cultivated it. The specific tragedy of Flame Princess in the Elements arc is that she becomes what everyone feared: pure fire, destroying everything around her. And then the fear is resolved, not by defeating her, but by restoring her. LSP's anti-elemental power doesn't eliminate the elementals, it returns them to themselves. Flame Princess, at full elemental power, is terrifying. Flame Princess, as herself, is someone who learned to govern a kingdom with more justice than her father managed in a lifetime. The show is specifically arguing that the dangerous version of someone and the real version of someone are not the same. The Flame King imprisoned Phoebe because the dangerous version was what he imagined when he looked at her. He never tried to meet the real version. Here's the piece of obscure lore about the relationship between life and death that changes Together Again when you see it clearly. Life and death are not antagonists. They are not enemies. The show presents them as partners, two entities whose functions are complementary, whose jobs are different expressions of the same cosmic process. Life brings souls into new forms. Death takes those same forms and moves souls forward through the dead worlds. The cycle they maintain together is what makes Adventure Time's universe a place of meaning rather than just a place of things that happen. They had a son together. This is remarkable for a specific reason. It means life and death chose to create something new. The entities whose job is to manage what is created and what ends created, something with no clear role in the system. A new life, produced by life and death together, that doesn't fit the categories either of them manages. The son is a paradox that his parents made and then didn't know what to do with. The Lich's exploitation of this is precise. He didn't attack the system directly. Every direct attack on Finn and Jake and the world of Ooh had failed. He went to the system's vulnerability, the being inside it, who felt no part of it. New Death's loneliness is the Lich's entry point. The most effective attack on existence is not power, it's isolation. Find the being that feels isolated from the system it was born into. Whisper in its ear. Give it a purpose that amounts to destroying the very thing it was isolated from. The Lich is the most patient, strategic thinker in Adventure Time. He waited millennia in amber. He waited in a penguin's body. He waited as a hand in a glove. He is very good at identifying the moment when waiting becomes action. Life's response to the crisis, giving Finn and Jake the kiss of life, is the show's statement about what defeats the Lich's manipulation. Not force, not cosmic power, but the specific weapon of restored connection. You heal the broken relationship by giving the estranged beings the means to restore it. The kiss of life is literally the energy of life applied to the problem death created. The solution is the opposite of the problem, and when Mr. Fox becomes the new death, what the show is saying is, the system is more resilient than any of its temporary managers. Death was killed, the dead worlds were destroyed and rebuilt, New Death was stopped, and a fox who happened to be there got the job. The system continued, the reincarnation cycle resumed. Souls moved forward, life shaped new bodies. The cycle went on. Everything in Adventure Time's universe is on its way somewhere. Even the worst things, even the broken things, even the things that seem like endings. They are all stages in a process that moves forward, slowly, imperfectly, but forward. The show's cosmology is a sustained argument that nothing is actually stuck, even Wyatt, alone in the first dead world, even the Lich, redirected into Sweet Pea, even Peppermint Butler, growing back to his full self from a child's body, one learned spell at a time. The 50 Dead Worlds are the show's most concrete statement of that argument, a structured, indexed, Buddhist-adjacent, cosmological system that says, without ambiguity, that everything moves toward enlightenment. Not quickly, not without suffering, but everything moves. And the obscure law is the show saying the same thing in smaller language. Flame Princess, in a lantern, moves toward becoming the person who rules the Fire Kingdom well. BMO on the drift, lost and confused, moves toward finding Finn. Peppermint Butler as a child with no memories, moves toward becoming the Dark One again. The guard at the Blee headquarters, waiting centuries, moves toward getting 2 damaged people to write him one more issue. Everything in the show is waiting. Everything in the show arrives. That's the obscure lore at its core, not a collection of Easter eggs and footnotes. The thesis of the show, stated in the smallest possible words, in the details that require the most attention to see. Subscribe, come back. Let me now go through the lore that didn't make it into the first sections, but belongs in a comprehensive treatment of obscure Adventure Time material. The lore about Ghost Princess and Clarence, Season 3, Episode 24, is a microcosm of how the show's afterlife works in miniature. Ghost Princess has been haunting Ooh without knowing why. She doesn't remember her death. She's stuck as a ghost because she hasn't resolved whatever is keeping her here. Finn and Jake help her uncover the truth. She and Clarence were alive. They were together, and Clarence accidentally killed her with a cheese wheel. When she remembers, when the truth of what happened is finally seen, she can forgive and move on. She ascends to the 50th Dead World. Clarence joins her. This is the first time the 50th Dead World is named, and the specific logic, you can't move on until you see clearly what happened to you, is the show's miniature version of its entire afterlife system. The Dead Worlds are not punishment or reward in a crude sense. They're the conditions for seeing clearly. Each world is a context in which something about the previous life can be processed. The progression toward the 50th is the progression toward complete clarity, toward not needing to understand anything, because understanding is no longer the operative mode. Ghost Princess and Clarence getting there together. 2 people who died tangled in something painful and unresolved, finding the clarity to release it, is the show's earliest statement of what enlightenment looks like in its universe. Not solitude, not transcendence away from relationship. Together. Jake is in the 50th dead world alone when Finn arrives. Jake has achieved enlightenment without Finn. This is a departure from the Ghost Princess model, and the show is deliberate about it. Jake let go of everything, including the thing Finn can't let go of, each other. And Finn's arrival, his refusal to let Jake be at peace without him, is simultaneously an act of love and an act of attachment that the 50th Dead World's cosmology would identify as the specific obstacle to enlightenment. Finn doesn't achieve enlightenment. Finn reincarnates with Jake, together, as always. The show is honest about this. Finn is not yet the soul that reaches the 50th Dead World. He has more lives to live, more things to learn. He and Jake choose each other over Nirvana, which means they'll be back, as Shermie and Beth, who we see in the finale, who will have more adventures, and who will eventually have to face this same question again. The show gives you Ghost Princess and Clarence reaching the 50th together as what's possible, and then it gives you Finn and Jake choosing not to, not yet, because they love each other too much to accept any version of the universe that doesn't include the other person in it. Both are beautiful, both are true, and the show holds both simultaneously without telling you which is better. Now the Joshua and Margaret lore that the show built, and that the competing videos barely touched. In Joshua and Margaret Investigations, Season 6, Episode 21, the show reveals the circumstances of Jake's birth through the framing device of Joshua's case files. Joshua and Margaret were private investigators, working a case in the woods. Joshua was bitten by a shape-shifting alien creature. The bite left an entity growing inside a bump on his forehead. Margaret lanced the bump. Jake emerged. The alien creature's identity is never established. The show explicitly marks this as a mystery it won't resolve. What was the alien creature? Where did it come from? Was the bite intentional? The wiki notes these questions and then answers them with, "The show never fully explains." This is Adventure Time flagging a deliberate choice. They could have answered it. They chose not to. But the episode does something remarkable in the margins. Joshua's case files are the framing device. Finn and Jake are reading them, and the case that produced Jake is one file among many. Joshua and Margaret had a whole career. They had a whole life of investigations, of adventures, of problems solved in the specific way of two capable people who trusted each other and worked together. Jake's birth is one entry in a file cabinet of a life that the show constructs entirely from implication. The 45th Dead World, where Joshua and Margaret spend their afterlife, completes this. They're together. They're in a partially crystalline house. The world is strange. Glitching surfaces, three-eyed ravens, but they're there together, and the design implies stability within the strangeness. Their afterlife is exactly what their life was. Unusual circumstances, faced together. Jake inherited something specific from Joshua and Margaret that the show is careful to establish: the capacity to be a good partner. Joshua and Margaret were partners in every sense. Jake's relationship with Lady Rainicorn, which is the show's only straightforwardly healthy long-term romantic relationship, is the downstream expression of what two people who work well together look like when they raise a child together. Jake knew what it looked like because he grew up watching it, and then he did something his parents hadn't done. He became a partner to his brother, not a romantic partner, not an investigative partner, but the specific kind of partner who makes you better at being yourself. That's what Joshua and Margaret gave Jake, and it's what Jake gave Finn. The capacity passes. Here's the lore about the Nightosphere that the show built carefully across multiple seasons, and that most people treat as a single concept. The Nightosphere is a dimension. This much is clear. What's less understood is its specific relationship to the Adventure Time cosmological hierarchy, and what it means that it exists alongside the Dead Worlds. When characters in Adventure Time die, they go to the Dead Worlds. That's established. But when Hunson Abadir recruits souls, when he sucks the souls out of living beings, where do those souls go? The show is not specific. The Nightosphere contains demons and monsters, and Hunson's seat of power. Whether the souls Hunson collects also go there, and whether the Nightosphere functions as a parallel afterlife or an alternative destination for specific kinds of souls is never fully explained. The wiki notes that Hunson and Death once competed for the number of dead people they were bringing in. This implies a genuine contest, that Hunson's soul collecting and Death's soul processing overlap. that there's a population of souls that could go either way. The Nightosphere, as an afterlife competitor to the Dead World system, is a piece of cosmological architecture the show built, and then mostly didn't develop. Marceline's rejection of the Nightosphere is the show's most personal statement about this. She could rule it. She's Hunson's heir. She has the Abadir amulet. She has the power. She chose not to. She chose to be a vampire queen in Oo instead. The title Vampire Queen is ceremonial because she has no vampires to rule. She made herself a ruler of nothing, rather than inherit a kingdom she didn't want. That choice, to be technically queen of nothing in Oo, rather than actually powerful in the Nightosphere, is one of the show's most understated character definitions. Marceline knows who she doesn't want to be. She's been certain about that for 1,000 years. The Abadir amulet itself deserves a moment. Hunson created it, either as the weapon that killed the previous Lord of Evil, allowing Hunson to take the title, or as a family heirloom depending on which version of his self-description you trust. Hunson passes it to Marceline. Marceline wore it as a child, and the experience was sufficiently scarring that she rejected everything it represented. Finn accidentally puts it on in Daddy's Little Monster, Season 3, Episode 15, and is briefly transformed into a demon, illustrating the specific danger. Even the purest soul is vulnerable to the Nightosphere's transforming power when the conduit is direct enough. The fact that Hunson carries his entire power source as a pendant, that the Lord of Evil's primary weapon is a piece of jewelry he wears at all times, is one of the show's most understated visual jokes. The most dangerous man in hell is the one who looks like he's just wearing a necklace. Now, the lore about rattleballs, which is obscure in the specific way that most Adventure Time supporting character lore is obscure. It's fully canon, it has clear emotional weight, and it exists in a single episode that most viewers have seen once. Rattleballs, the episode, is Season 6, Episode 18. The backstory: Princess Bubblegum created a legion of robots called Rattleballs as police and security. They were so good at fighting crime that they eliminated all crime. With no crime to fight, they had no function, and without function, they began applying their combat capabilities to each other and to the environment around them. They became dangerous precisely because they were too effective. PB had them all destroyed, compressed into cubes, killed. One Rattlebot escaped. He gave himself a name, Rattleballs, and lived in a junkyard for years, training himself, maintaining himself, becoming proficient at swordsmanship, in a world where sword fighting is Finn's domain. He trains Finn in the episode. He is caught by the banana guards, and he goes quietly, choosing to be recaptured rather than continue hiding, because Finn has a life worth protecting, and Rattleballs was built to protect. The specific question the episode raises: PB had all her Rattleballs killed because they became too efficient at their purpose. Is that her right? She made them. She deployed them. They did what they were designed to do, and when doing what they were designed to do created a secondary problem, she destroyed them. The show presents this without judgment, but also without absolution. PB's decisions about her creations are consistent. They're made from her understanding of what's necessary for the kingdom, and the beings affected by those decisions have limited recourse. Rattleballs chose not to be destroyed. He hid, he survived, he trained, he kept his purpose. Protection, even without the official sanction of the entity who created him. And when it was over, when his student was trained, and his existence was discovered, he didn't fight. He accepted the consequence of having defied her decision to end him, because fighting would have put Finn at risk. A robot created to protect, who survived his death sentence, who spent years in a junkyard, who trained the show's hero in secret, and who went back quietly when the time came, because protecting the hero was still more important than protecting himself. That's not a supporting character arc. That's a complete story. It just happened to be in one episode. The lore about the Vampire King and Marceline's absorption of the Vampire Court deserves more attention than it gets. The Stakes miniseries, Season 7, Episodes 2 through 11, is the show's most sustained exploration of Marceline's history before she became who she is in the present. The specific piece of lore most people underestimate: when Marceline killed each vampire in the Vampire Court, she absorbed their souls and their specific powers. She became the repository of every vampire the court represented. The Fool gave her levitation, the Empress gave her hypnosis and invisibility, the Hierophant gave her shape-shifting, the Moon gave her regeneration, and the Vampire King, when she killed him in the process of him biting her, gave her his soul and his bite simultaneously. She killed him, and he turned her. She won, and she lost in the same moment. What she carries now is not just vampire powers. She carries the specific essences of 5 distinct vampires, each with their own character and history. When the Stakes miniseries resurrects the vampire court by extracting them from Marceline, each vampire is restored as a full individual, not a memory or an echo, but an actual person. The Fool and the Empress and the Hierophant and the Moon and the Vampire King, all of them complete, all of them present, all of them angry. Marceline carries 5 people inside her, has carried them for 1,000 years. The show presents this as a power source. She absorbed their abilities, but it's also a philosophical weight. Every power she uses has a previous owner. The shape-shifting she employs was the Hierophant's. The regeneration is the Moon's. She is, in a specific sense, a composite being, not the 5 vampires. She's Marceline, with the accumulated powers of 5 beings who no longer exist separately, but those 5 beings shaped who she could become. Their specific capacities became her capacities. Her 1,000-year development as a vampire queen is built from what they were. This is the show's quiet meditation on inheritance. Marceline inherited the powers of people she killed. She didn't choose to inherit them. The absorption was biological, an automatic function of her demon's soul-sucking ability, but she has lived with those inheritances for a millennium and made them her own. The Fool's power to fly is hers now. The Moon's regeneration is hers. The question the show doesn't fully ask, but clearly poses: what do you owe the people whose capacities you've absorbed? What relationship do you have to the things that became yours through an act of violence? The Vampire King's final resolution in Stakes is interesting on this level. He was the most powerful vampire she absorbed. When he's restored and they face each other again, he's not simply an enemy. He's someone whose soul she carried for centuries, whose essence was part of what she was, whom she knows better than she knew him when she killed him. The resolution is his cure, removing the vampirism rather than his death. She absorbs his vampirism one more time, choosing to take it back rather than destroy him. She is still, in some sense, his keeper, the person who killed him and carried him and made what was his hers, returning to take the burden one more time to let him go free. That's Marceline, 1,000 years of that specific kind of complicated relationship to everything she's absorbed and lost and carried and had taken and chosen. Now the lore about the human tribe and Susan Strong that the show built and never fully resolved. Susan Strong appears first in Season 2 and is immediately mysterious. She's physically enormous, wears a cat hat identical to the hats worn by the human tribe, the fish people who live underground, and seems to be human. Finn is ecstatic, potentially, finally, another human. But the show is careful not to confirm it immediately. She might be a human, she might be something else. The wiki for the fan theory that the humans were genetically engineered scientists from before the Mushroom War notes that the show never confirmed or denied this. Susan's specific physical capabilities, superhuman strength, the ability to survive conditions that would kill a normal person, are consistent with either a pre-war genetic modification or something else entirely. Her backstory is presented across multiple episodes in fragments that consistently raise more questions than they answer. By the Islands miniseries, it's confirmed that Susan is indeed a human, one of the island humans, specifically one of the Seekers, the agents trained to retrieve hiders who try to escape. She has cybernetic implants. She was sent to find and retrieve someone from the mainland and got stranded or chose to stay. Her whole existence in Oo, her cat hat, her life with the human tribe, her friendship with Finn is downstream of a mission that the show implies she eventually abandoned, or that abandoned her. The human tribe themselves, the fish people underground, whom Finn initially believed were humans because of their hats and their above-ground burial practices, are one of the show's most persistent, unexplained entities. They speak differently, they live underground, they have specific cultural practices that suggest pre-Mushroom War origin. Whether they're the descendants of a research colony, or humans who mutated underground, or something else entirely, the show never specifies. They exist as an unexplained community in an unexplained space, beneath an unexplained part of Oo. Butopia, their underground city, is partially implied to be a remnant of a pre-war structure. The fire that powers it was provided by the Fire Kingdom, according to fragments of the show's dialogue. The specific history of Butopia, why it exists, who built it, what it was before the humans, is a room the show opened the door to and then left ajar. This is what makes Adventure Time's world feel lived in ways most animated shows don't achieve. The spaces that haven't been explained feel like they have explanations that nobody had time to give you. The humans aren't a mistake or an inconsistency. They're a community with a history that predates the show's interest in them. They exist in the world the way communities exist in real life, with full histories that the people passing through them don't have access to and don't always know to ask about. Let me close with the piece of obscure lore that I find most emotionally resonant: the specific history of the Enchiridion and Simon Petrikov. The Enchiridion is a hero's manual. It contains tests of heroism, the ability to refuse to kill a neutral ant, to navigate trials, to make difficult choices. Whoever passes the tests receives the manual, which is also a key to the multiverse when the right gems are assembled and it's activated. Simon Petrikov discovered the Enchiridion before the Mushroom War. There's a newspaper clipping in I Remember You, Season 4, Episode 25, showing Simon holding the book with a headline about an archaeological expedition. Simon, the man who would become the Ice King, found the hero's manual. He found it before Finn existed, before the Mushroom War, before any of the events of the show. The man who lost himself to the crown also found the book that would eventually guide the hero who would stand against the evil. The crown's curse helped sustain Simon's entire pre-war career, connects to both the thing that destroyed him and the thing that would oppose the destruction. He found the crown in Scandinavia. He found the Enchiridion on an expedition, two artifacts of enormous cosmic significance, acquired by a normal person who didn't know what he was holding, and whose ordinary life was shaped by both. The Lich eventually manipulated Finn into using the Enchiridion to open the portal to Prismo's time room, the act that allowed the Lich to reach Prismo and make his wish for extinction. The book Simon found was used against the world Simon loved by the cosmic evil that the crown Simon wore had been fighting against for 65 million years. The man who bought the crown that was imprinted with Gunther's wish also found the book that would be used to allow the last scholar of GOLB to reach the center of the multiverse. None of this was intentional. Simon was just a scholar who found interesting things, but the show's cosmic architecture made his ordinary scholarship, his curiosity about ancient artifacts, his research, his expeditions, the pivot point for catastrophe. He collected things that mattered without knowing they mattered. He touched the machinery of the universe as a civilian, and the machinery used him. That's the obscure lore of Adventure Time at its most complete. It's not just that there are interesting facts most people don't know, it's that the facts most people don't know form a picture that the facts most people do know don't fully reveal. The Dead World's Buddhist structure, Peppermint Butler's self-curse, Kokentepe as the original source of all magic, the Nightosphere's competition with the Dead Worlds for souls, Rattleballs training Finn in a junkyard, Marceline carrying 5 vampires inside her, Susan Strong as a stranded seeker, Simon accidentally finding both the thing that would destroy him and the book that would eventually be used to attack the universe he cared about. All of it was in the show, distributed across seasons, hidden in background details and single-episode lore drops and throwaway lines that turn out to be load-bearing. The show trusted you to find it. Thank you for spending tonight finding it with me. More obscure lore that deserves proper treatment before we close. The specific lore about tree trunks that the show built across seasons and that both competing videos covered only in passing. Tree Trunks is an elderly small elephant who bakes apple pies. This is the surface. The show built a history for Tree Trunks across background references, episodes, and the comics that makes her one of the most thoroughly storied secondary characters in the franchise. Before settling in the apple orchard, Tree Trunks was a pirate. She was married to Randy, her high school sweetheart, but divorced him in the name of adventure. The show doesn't explain what that means at a young elephant scale, but the implication is clear. She went to sea, she built a pirate career, she married again, a man named Danny, who only wanted her ship. She responded by marooning Danny on an island and attempted to kill his co-conspirator. She started a company with her pirate treasure. She fell in love with her SEAL secretary, Wyatt. She married him. He became addicted to apple pies. Specifically, became so obsessed with them that it superseded everything else in his life, and she divorced him. He eventually ends up in the first dead world, the worst afterlife. The implication, given Wyatt's apple pie addiction as presented, is that whatever Wyatt was and did beyond the relationship with tree trunks was bad enough to land him there. The apple pie thing may have been the least of it. Tree trunks also had a relationship with the alien greys, the species that Hugo merged with his human survivors. The specifics of how an elderly orchard-dwelling elephant made contact with beings from another dimension are not explained. The show presents it as a background fact of her life, which is exactly the right tone. Tree Trunks has always been the character who suggests that ordinary seeming lives contain extraordinary content that they don't advertise. She makes apple pies. She has also had 3 divorces, run a pirate operation, started a business empire, had children with aliens, and married Mr. Pig, who is possibly the most normal thing to ever happen to her. In the 30th Dead World, Tree Trunks is surrounded by Mr. Pig and her various ex-lovers. The show's afterlife system places her in a warm, pastoral world and gives her back the full company of her relational history. Not just the last marriage, but all of them. Wyatt is specifically not there. He's in the first, but everyone else is. Tree Trunks' afterlife is a reunion. Her version of the 30th Dead World is an apple orchard full of everyone she ever loved, including the alien husbands who visited every few years from another dimension. That's not a supporting character's fate. That's a complete and fully realized portrait of a life that chose connection over consistency. She loved many beings, imperfectly, and across species and dimensions, and her afterlife is all of them together. Now the lore about the Jake tattoo in Obsidian, and what it confirms. Obsidian, the second Distant Lands special, focuses on Marceline and Princess Bubblegum. Adult Finn appears as support. He has a Jake tattoo on his chest. The tattoo design includes flowers, specifically memorial imagery, the visual language of tribute to someone who has died. This is the show confirming Jake's death without announcing it. Jake is gone. Adult Finn carries Jake on his chest, not just as sentiment, but as the specific memorial you make for someone you've lost. The flowers tell you. Every frame Adult Finn appears in the Obsidian special, he's carrying Jake's memorial image. Most viewers noticed the tattoo. Most viewers filed it as aesthetic or sentimental. The flowers are the lore. The Together Again special, which came after Obsidian, confirms it. Jake died before Finn. Finn spent however many years of his adult life carrying Jake on his chest, while continuing to do what Finn does, which is show up for the people he loves. He showed up for Marceline and Bubblegum in Obsidian. With Jake on his chest, he showed up. The specific thing about the Obsidian portrait of adult Finn that changes when you understand the tattoo. Every moment of care Finn performs in that special, every moment of support, every act of showing up, he's doing it while carrying Jake, not as a metaphor, as a literal image on his body that he chose to put there and chose to carry into every room he enters. Jake is in the Glass Kingdom with Finn. Jake is there when Finn supports Marceline through the Molto Lavo situation. Jake is present in every frame because Finn brought him there. That's how Finn chose to handle the loss. He didn't stop going. He didn't stop caring. He put Jake on his chest and kept going, carrying the loss visibly, making it part of how he moved through the world, rather than something he hid. The flowers on the tattoo, the specific memorial visual language. The show trusted that whoever was paying close enough attention would see what it meant. Most people saw the tattoo. Not everyone saw the flowers. Let me now address the specific lore about the cosmic owl that the show built across multiple episodes, and that connects to the dream system in ways most people only half understood. The cosmic owl oversees all dreams in the multiverse. This is established in multiple episodes. His presence in a dream transforms it from a subjective experience into a prophetic one, a croak dream, if the dreamer dies in it, or a premonition dream more broadly, if the events depicted are destined to occur. Hoots, Season 6, Episode 25, is the episode that most fully develops the Cosmic Owl's situation. The episode reveals that the Cosmic Owl is desperately lonely. He lives in a star motel room. He monitors all dreams in the multiverse simultaneously and perpetually. He cannot have a love life because his presence in any dream transforms it into prophecy. Any romantic encounter in a dream with him becomes, by the nature of what he is, a cosmologically significant event, rather than a personal one. His nature prevents him from having anything merely personal. The cosmic owl is trapped in the most intimate possible isolation, surrounded by the dreams of all conscious beings in the multiverse, unable to participate in any of them without changing them. This parallel to Prismo is deliberate. Prismo is similarly isolated. He exists only while his old man sleeps. He's confined to the time room. His friendship with Jake is one of the few genuine connections he has across an existence defined by his role. The cosmic entities in Adventure Time are systematically lonely, not because loneliness is their punishment, but because the scale and nature of their functions prevents the ordinary intimacy that makes existence meaningful. The most powerful beings in the show are the most isolated. The cosmic owl's appearance in specific dreams is the show's mechanism for distinguishing between a dream that matters cosmically and a dream that's just a dream. The Croak dream in The New Frontier, Season 3, Episode 18, where Jake dreams of his death, the cosmic owl appears. This is confirmation, within the show's own rules, that the death Jake dreams is real and fated. Adventure Time built a coherent epistemology of dreams into its cosmology, and the cosmic owl is the mechanism. Every time you see the cosmic owl in a dream sequence in the show is telling you, this is not just character psychology, this is going to happen. The cosmic owl doesn't appear in King Worm, Season 4's Dream Trap episode, because King Worm's dream is subjective. The cosmic owl doesn't appear in Pew Hoy, the Pillow World episode, because that is Finn's experience in an alternate reality, not a prophetic vision of his future. The show used the cosmic owl's presence or absence as a precise marker of which category a dream sequence fell into, and most viewers never noticed the system, because it was never explained in a single expository moment. It was just there, consistent, waiting to be observed. Here's the lore about the relationship between magic and the Mushroom War that most people understand incompletely. Pendleton Ward said the show takes place after the bombs have fallen and magic has come back into the world. The word back is significant. Magic didn't arrive with the Mushroom War, it returned. It existed before. The spells in Simon and Betty's book worked once, and then didn't work for the period of scientific modernity, and then worked again when the mutagenic energy of the bomb altered the planet's fundamental nature. This means the Adventure Time universe had an age of magic, then an age of science, then a new age of magic. The pre-war world of Simon and Betty, with its universities and archaeology and cars and television, was the scientific age. Everything the show treats as ruins, that was the scientific age in its final form. The world of Ooh is not the post-apocalyptic aftermath of our current trajectory. It's the post-apocalyptic aftermath of a world that had already suppressed the magic that Kokentepe's primordial essence originally powered. Wizard City's official magic, the controlled, academic version, is the scientific age's attempt to domesticate magic when magic returned after the war. It's the same impulse that named Kokentepe's dark energy forbidden, the desire to make the uncontrollable controllable, to put the primordial source of all magic into a curriculum and grade it. The Mushroom War cracked the barrier between science and magic. Wizard City was the scientific sensibility's response to magic. Maybe we can study it safely. Peppermint Butler's dark magic, which reaches directly back to primordial sources without the academic filter, is the alternative response. Maybe we can be honest about what it is. Both approaches have valid points. The show doesn't fully adjudicate between them. It just shows you what each produces. The connection between the mushroom bomb and magic's return is also the connection between the Lich's physical creation and the resurgence of magic. The same event that brought magic back also gave the Lich his body, the thing that makes Ooh possible. The mutagenic energy that created sentient candy and talking animals and all of it is the same thing that created the show's primary antagonist. The world's joy and the world's greatest threat came from the same source. The mushroom bomb is the show's original sin, the thing that ended the old world, created the new one, and installed the extinction principle in corporeal form simultaneously. Everything good in Ooh is built on the same foundation as everything bad. The Candy Kingdom, the ice magic that kept Simon and Marceline alive, the ability of plants to think and animals to speak, all of it traces back to the bomb. Adventure Time is a show about beings who were made by catastrophe and chose to build something beautiful with what the catastrophe left them. And the bomb itself, we never know who dropped it or why. The Mushroom War's cause is permanently obscured, which means the thing that made everything is irreducibly tragic. It happened. It could not have been undone, and nobody who made it meant for Ooh to exist. Ooh was an accident, the most beautiful accident in the universe, made from the worst intention of an unknown civilization that destroyed itself. That's the show. That's the whole show, in the origin of the world. Now, the final piece of obscure lore I want to leave you with tonight. The phrase, "before there was nothing, there were monsters." The Lich says this in Gold Stars, Season 6, Episode 34, while briefly inhabiting Sweet Pea's body. It's one of the most chilling lines in the show. It's also one of the most cosmologically precise. The Lich is describing his own origin. He is one of the monsters. He existed before the universe, before nothing, before even the concept of nothing had been conceptualized, and he survived into this universe carrying the memory of that prior state, the state before anything existed, when existence itself was the aberration. But here's the piece most people don't fully sit with. If the Lich is the monster who remembered the time before nothing, then his desire for extinction is not madness, it's memory. He knows what it was like before. He is trying to return to something he actually experienced. The extinction principle is not a destructive impulse in the way we normally understand destructive impulses. It's nostalgia. The Lich is homesick for the state before the universe existed, and his entire project, across 65 million years of patient effort, is to go home. This is the show's most sophisticated portrait of evil, not a being who wants to destroy, because destruction is fun, but a being who wants to restore a previous state that he genuinely prefers and actually remembers. He's the last one who remembers what came before nothing. Everyone else who exists is living in the aberration he's trying to correct. The fact that the aberration they're living in contains Marceline making music about loss and love, Jake eating bacon pancakes, Finn choosing his meat reality over transcendence, Princess Bubblegum building a civilization from candy, BMO singing to make a song to defeat chaos. The fact that the aberration the Lich wants to end is specifically this, specifically these people and their specific attachments. That's the show's entire argument delivered in a single implicit comparison. The Lich remembers what it was like before them. He wants to go back. And the show's answer is, look at what you'd be erasing. Look at what the aberration made. Look at the monster who became Sweet Pea and got loved by tree trunks and Mr. Pig, and went to school and ate lunch. The Lich is homesick for nothing. Adventure Time is the show's argument that the world he's been trying to return to is not worth returning to. Not because the world is perfect, because of what the aberration contains. Because of what existence made when it accidentally happened. That's the obscure lore at its most fundamental. Not a fact about episode numbers or production history. The emotional core of the show, hiding in plain sight inside the most terrifying line a cartoon villain has ever delivered. Before there was nothing, there were monsters. And then something happened. And then this. Everything stays. Let me now go through several more pieces of obscure lore that haven't been addressed yet. The specific history of Hunson Abadir that the show distributed across seasons in ways most viewers didn't fully assemble. Hunson Abadir claims not to know where he came from. He doesn't know if he had parents. He doesn't know how he became the Lord of Evil. His self-reported origin is that he created the Abadir amulet, used it to slay the previous Lord of Evil, and took the title. Whether the amulet was a pre-existing artifact or something he created specifically to kill his predecessor, and whether the predecessor was also named Abadir, or whether he took the name with the title, is unresolved. What the show does establish, Hunson has had access to Earth for thousands of years, not just recently, thousands of years. He and Peppermint Butler play golf. He competed with Death for Souls. He built a dungeon with the Ice King at some unspecified point in the past. These details create a picture of a figure who has been loosely embedded in the structure of Ooh-adjacent life for much longer than his actual screen presence suggests. His relationship with Marceline is the show's most sustained portrait of his character. He is genuinely dangerous. The soul-sucking ability is not theatrical. It's functional, and he has used it. He is also, in his specific way, a terrible father, not a malicious father. The show is careful about this distinction. He didn't abandon Marceline because he didn't care. He abandoned her because he's the Lord of Evil. He rules a dimension in another reality, and bringing a half-demon child there was apparently not part of his consideration. He assumed she was fine. He didn't ask. The Fries incident, the incident that inspired the Fry song, is the show's most compressed portrait of neglect. He ate her fries. That's it. In a post-apocalyptic world, where Marceline has already lost her mother and effectively lost Simon, her father, the cosmic entity she believed might finally take care of her, chose a plate of fries over her feelings. The specific smallness of the betrayal is what makes it devastating. It wasn't a dramatic failure. It was someone not thinking about her in the moment when thinking about her would have cost nothing. The Fry song is Marceline's first piece of music about loss. It's also, in retrospect, the blueprint for all her subsequent music, the processing of things that happened to her in song form, because song form is the only way she can make the processing bearable. The Frys are funny, the song is funny, and both are covering something that isn't funny at all. Now, the specific lore about Magic Man that the competing video touched on but didn't develop fully. Magic Man is from Mars. He was kind before he became cruel. He loved Margles. Golb took Margles. He built a defense system that looked like Margles using his own nightmares. The defense system went insane. Magic Man lost Margles twice. Once to Golb, and once to the nightmare version of her. And the second loss broke him in a way the first hadn't, because the second loss revealed that he had been pouring his grief and his love into something built from the worst parts of himself. The specific tragedy of Margles, the magical automatic resistance-generating laser energy supplier, is that it was both a monument to Margles and a betrayal of her. He built it to protect Mars from Golb returning. He built it in her image. And because his grief clouded his judgment, because loss makes you reach for comfort in whatever form is available, he built it from his own nightmares, rather than from any real understanding of who she was. The construct was Margles' appearance wrapped around Magic Man's damage. When it went insane, it was because it was his nightmare, not her. He lost her again to the worst version of himself. This is why Magic Man became Magic Man, the sadistic trickster who torments random people with no discernible purpose. He is a being who lost love twice to his own limitation, once to a cosmic entity beyond his power, and once to his own insufficient understanding of what he was trying to preserve. The cruelty is grief with nowhere to go. The pranks are pain that has turned outward, because turning it inward would mean confronting what he failed to do. His eventual return to something like normal man, when Betty takes his powers and his hat, completes the arc in the most Adventure Time way possible. He becomes diminished, pitiable, slightly helpful, slowly recovering some of his original kindness. The magic was part of the problem. The powers that let him torment people were also the powers that let him avoid dealing with Margles directly. Without them, he has to be in the grief instead of performing around it. Golb's role as the entity that connects Magic Man, Betty, and Margles is the show's most elegant threading of disparate storylines. Golb took Margles. Magic Man spiraled. Eventually, Golb was summoned to Ooh and took Betty the same way it had taken Margles. Not destroyed, but transformed into something unrecognizable, merged with the chaos principle, no longer the person who was loved. Simon lost Betty to the same entity that Magic Man lost Margles to. The two men who loved women who were taken by chaos spent their adjacent storylines both trying to get those women back, both failing in different ways, both left with versions of themselves that had been broken by the attempt. Magic Man's final arc, reconnecting with Mars, slowly recovering, eventually becoming King Man, is the show's portrait of what grief looks like when the thing you were using to avoid it is removed. You become smaller, you become simpler, and in the simplicity, you can start actually moving through the thing you've been avoiding. Here's the lore about the Citadel that most viewers understood only partially. The Citadel is a cosmic prison for beings who have committed what the show calls cosmic crimes. It exists in the multiverse as a facility managed by the Citadel Guardians, enormous crystalline beings who are themselves the product of what they protect. The Guardian blood, which is the substance that flows from a Citadel Guardian when wounded, has specific transformative properties. When the Lich is dunked in it at the end of Escape from the Citadel, Season 6, Episode 2, he becomes Sweet Pea. The blood of the prison's guards is the substance that transforms the extinction principle into a child. This is not a small detail. The Citadel was built to contain the worst criminals in the multiverse. Its guardians are made of something that, when applied to the worst criminal in the multiverse, produces a child who goes to school and eats lunch. The prison and its transformation are the same substance. Incarceration and redemption, or at least radical transformation, are made of the same thing in Adventure Time's universe. The Citadel guards aren't just containment, they're the mechanism by which the thing that needs containing becomes something else. Martin Mertens, is in the Citadel. Finn's father, imprisoned for cosmic crimes, the specific nature of which the show reveals gradually and never fully explains. Martin is in the same prison as the worst criminals in the multiverse because of things he did before Finn was born, during the island arc, during the circumstances that led to baby Finn being placed on a raft. What Martin did, what specific cosmic crime lands someone in the Citadel, the show keeps ambiguous. He's a person who ran away from consequences. He ended up in the ultimate consequence. And when Finn finally finds Martin in the Citadel, Martin shows no interest in being a father. He's interested in getting out. He uses Finn's presence, the presence of the son he abandoned, as a means to an end. He heals Finn's arm using his own healing abilities, and in doing so detaches Finn's grip, essentially using his own gift to his son as a method of avoiding connection. He heals Finn and loses him in the same motion, the arm loss. Finn reaches for Martin. Martin's healing magic causes Finn's arm to regress and release. Finn loses the reaching arm reaching for his father. The show's reincarnation arc, Shoko losing her right arm, Finn losing his right arm, the arm that reaches toward connection repeatedly being the arm that is lost, has its most specific and most personal instance when Finn reaches for Martin. He reaches for his father. The reaching costs him his arm, and a flower grows from the stump. Adventure Time always does this. The wound produces the growth. The reaching that costs everything keeps producing something. Finn loses his arm reaching for the father who uses his healing touch to escape rather than connect, and a flower grows from where the arm was. The universe's renewal principle keeps producing renewal even from its own specific, personal, inherited losses. Now let me address one more specific piece of obscure lore that almost never gets discussed, the role of the screamometer in the Ice Kingdom. This is smaller than the other lore covered tonight, but it illustrates something about the show's construction that the bigger lore pieces don't. Adventure Time built a world where even the jokes are lore. The screamometer is a device in the Ice King's castle that measures the volume of screaming coming from the princesses he kidnaps. The Ice King uses it to rate kidnapping attempts. This is established in a couple of early episodes as comic background detail. The Ice King has a whole system. He has rankings. He has metrics. Here's what this is actually doing. It's showing you that the Ice King, even in his most ridiculous villain behavior, retains Simon's character. Simon was a scholar. Simon categorized and documented and measured. The Ice King can't access his memories of being Simon, but he builds systems of documentation and measurement anyway, because that's what Simon's mind does. The crown destroyed Simon's personality, his sanity, his memory, his appearance. It didn't destroy his fundamental cognitive approach to the world. Simon organized information. The Ice King, without knowing why, organizes screaming. This is the show's most compressed portrait of what the crown took and what it couldn't take. The specific terror of the Ice King, the reason his situation is so moving once you understand it, is not just that he lost his memory, it's that he retained the intellectual apparatus that built the memory, applied it to completely different purposes, and has no idea why he's doing it. The scholar who documented his own transformation on VHS tapes is also the wizard who rates kidnapping screams on a meter. Same person, same mind, different purposes. The methodology survived the catastrophe. The meaning didn't. Let me close this final section with the lore about Susan Strong's specific function in the show. Susan Strong, revealed as Kara, a seeker from the islands, represents the single most direct link between the human civilization that survived and the adventure world that Finn grew up in. She was trained to bring escaped humans back. She came to the mainland. She got stranded, or chose to stay, or both. She formed a community with the humans. She forgot, or suppressed, what she originally was. When her implants are damaged, and she briefly becomes more of herself, more of the seeker she was trained to be, she's terrifying. She's the institutional memory of a civilization that chose safety over everything, weaponized and dropped into a context that has no infrastructure for what she represents. The recovery of her original self, her name, her function, her island identity, and her choice to stay in Oo anyway, is the show's specific statement about what happens when you've been shaped by an institution and then released from it. She was shaped to be a seeker. She found a different context, and the question of who she is, without the function she was given, is the question the show leaves open. She doesn't go back to the islands. She stays. She is Kara, and she is Susan, and she is something the islands didn't have a word for. This is what Adventure Time does with every character it takes seriously. It asks what you are, when the thing that formed you is no longer your context. The Ice King without his crown, Betty without Simon to save, Peppermint Butler without his memories, Martin without the islands, Susan without the seeking. The answer is always the same. Whatever you are, you're still something. The thing that formed you is in you, but you are not only that thing. Susan Strong is Kara, who became Susan, who is now something the islands and Oo both contributed to creating. That's not a resolution, that's a person. Thank you for tonight. Thank you for the 2 hours. The obscure lore of Adventure Time is obscure not because it was hidden, but because finding it requires the kind of attention the show was always asking for and trusting you to give. Subscribe. Leave a comment with the piece of lore that changed something for you. And good night. Everything stays. The lore was always there. You just had to look. One final pass. The pieces I want to develop more fully before we truly close. The lore about BMO's specific relationship to loneliness that the show built deliberately. In 5 short Graybles, Season 4, Episode 2, we see BMO alone in the treehouse while Finn and Jake are out. BMO talks to their mirror reflection, naming it football. They pretend to be a living boy. They cook for themselves and eat alone and engage in an entire domestic scenario with an imaginary friend made from their own reflection. The AV Club review of BMO Noir noted that BMO is a being who makes entire worlds to keep themselves company. Entire fictional realities, the film noir mystery, the domestic fantasy with football, constructed specifically to fill the silence of a house with another voice. BMO's imagination is not whimsy, it's a coping mechanism for structural isolation. Here's the obscure lore piece. This is also what Mo did. Mo was an inventor who became more machine than human across centuries, who built hundreds of robots at his factory, who became so embedded in his own technology that his biological existence was increasingly supplementary. And at the center of all that productivity, he was alone. He wanted a son. He built BMO to be the companion for the son he never had. He gave BMO the mission of finding that child. BMO's loneliness, the elaborate internal worlds, the fictional companions, the tendency to make meaning from whatever is available, is the specific loneliness of a being designed to give company who hasn't yet found the person they're supposed to give it to. BMO was built to not be alone, and until Finn, BMO was alone in the specific way that being built for company but not having company produces. And then Finn, and then Jake, and then the treehouse. BMO found them, and for the period of the show's main run, BMO was not alone, and then they died. And BMO is still there in Together Again, still functional, telling stories to whoever will listen, processing the loss, the way BMO always processes everything, through narrative, through imagination, through making a story out of what happened. BMO tells Shermie and Beth about Finn and Jake and the Gum War and GOLB and the final battle. BMO is the show's historian because BMO is the last witness. The specific grief of BMO, never directly named, never performed, always expressed through the act of continuing to tell the stories, is the show's quietest portrait of bereavement. BMO does not stop. BMO keeps going because going is what BMO was built to do, and because stopping would mean confronting the silence of the treehouse with no one to fill it. The imagination that gave BMO football as a companion when Finn and Jake were out for a day is the same imagination that gives BMO stories to tell when Finn and Jake are gone permanently. Same mechanism, infinitely higher stakes. Mo built BMO to love. Love means loss. BMO will carry the losses for whatever the machine's remaining operational lifespan is, and BMO will keep telling stories about them. That's not a small thing. That's one of the most complete portraits of love's relationship to grief in the franchise. A small robot designed for joy, telling stories in a world that's moved on, to children who will also eventually move on, because the stories are all that's left, and the stories are worth telling. The lore about the Enchiridion and why Finn was given it deserves one more pass. The trials of the Enchiridion, the specific tests that must be passed to receive the book, are calibrated for a specific kind of heroism. The ability to refuse to kill the neutral ant when killing it would be easier, the ability to navigate moral complexity, the ability to encounter situations where the right choice is genuinely difficult and choose the right thing anyway. Simon Petrikov found the Enchiridion on an archaeological expedition. He didn't pass the trials. He found the book, presumably already assembled, the trials already embedded in it, and brought it home as an artifact. He treated it as an interesting object. He didn't know what it was or what it was for. Years later, Finn passed the trials. He was 12 or 13 years old, a child of the post-apocalyptic world, raised by dogs in a treehouse, and he passed tests designed to filter for genuine heroic virtue. He didn't pass them because he was destined to. He passed them because the specific person Jake and Joshua and Margaret's household had produced. Curious, principled, willing to refuse the easier choice when the easier choice was wrong, happened to be exactly what the Enchiridion's trials required. The book that Simon found without knowing what it was ended up being given to the person it was designed to find. Simon's scholarly curiosity brought the Enchiridion into the chain of events that led to Finn having it. The connection is not dramatic. There's no implication that Simon's finding it was fated to lead to Finn. It's just that the world is small enough that a scholar's expedition and a boy's heroism eventually connected through the specific book that both of them touched. And then the Lich used the Enchiridion, the hero's manual, the document of heroic virtue, to open a portal to the center of the multiverse. The Lich took the thing that was built to identify goodness and used it as a key to the place where he could end all life. The tool of heroic virtue became the tool of extinction, not because it stopped being what it was, because the Lich understood that the power the Enchiridion contained, the dimensional key, the gateway, was separable from the purpose it was built for. This is the show's statement about power. It can always be separated from its intended purpose by someone willing to use it wrong. The Enchiridion was always a key. It was built into a hero's manual so that only heroes would hold the key. The Lich found a way to hold the hero who held the manual and got the key, and then Finn destroyed the Enchiridion to create the portal himself, deliberately choosing to create the access he knew the Lich needed because the alternative was worse. Finn used the hero's manual as the hero it was designed for, in the specific act of sacrificing the book to prevent something worse from happening. He broke it because he understood it well enough to know when breaking it was right. The Enchiridion is the show's most complete object, a tool of heroic virtue that becomes a portal to disaster, that becomes a sacrifice, built for goodness, weaponized by evil, destroyed by the hero in the service of something better than its own preservation. The object's arc is the show's arc, in miniature. Thank you, truly, for the full 2 hours. The obscure lore of Adventure Time is the show's quietest voice. It's speaking in all the places the main narrative isn't looking. In the first dead world where Wyatt slowly sinks, in the screamometer that measures the wrong things for the right reasons, in the flower that grew from Finn's stump, in the coffee shop receipt in Simon's VHS tapes that confirms a date, in the snail with possessed eyes that appears in the background of episodes no one expected it to be in the Jake tattoo with flowers that most people saw and most people didn't understand. The show was always speaking, in all of these voices, at all of these volumes. You were always listening. Good night. The lore is still there. It always will be.